Welcome to the Alpha Pickleball Podcast, where we slice through the noise to bring you the juiciest insights, strategies, and stories from the dynamic world of pickleball. Join us as we serve up engaging conversations with top players, coaches, and enthusiasts, giving you an ace perspective on all things pickleball. Whether you're a seasoned pro or just stepping onto the court, get ready for a volley of knowledge that'll elevate your game to alpha levels. Let the rallies begin.
All right, welcome again to the show. I'm your host, Tats. We're really excited today because we have Rob Nunnery on the podcast, professional pickleball player, APP champ, all sorts of other stuff. Rob, thank you for coming on the show.
Of course, happy to be here and excited to talk pickleball.
One of the things that really stood out for me is you chronicled your path, and sort of starting out with pickleball, and you set a very clear intention. That was awesome.
Yeah.
Walk us through a bit of that. I mean, I don't see as much of that stuff out there because, that was with another sponsor back in the day. But walk me through some of your early days on, how you discovered pickleball and what were your first steps?
Sure. So I've always kind of liked the big idea type stuff and putting stuff out in public and doing having kind of public accountability, which, at the time it's like, I discovered, basically, just to give you some context and backstory, I discovered pickleball at the end of 2019. A friend of mine that I knew through advertising, through business stuff, was just like, he owns a sporting goods company. He's like, yeah, one of our fastest growing segments over the past 5 years has been this weird little sport called pickleball. And we just kind of watch the charts on these emerging trends of sports and what's being sold and what's being searched online. And this sport pickleball has just kind of been on the steady rise over the past 5 years. And he knew that I had come from a college tennis background. So he was just like, yeah, we're even sponsoring players right now. And some of our sponsored players are making more than some of our athletes in baseball, pro baseball. I was like, what? Weird, wild. And he's like, yeah, I'll just send you a paddle, go see if you like it. And so that was the end of 2019. I was living in Austin, Texas at the time, and I basically took a lesson at a local park from a local guy and tried to learn the rules. And I was like, man, this is just so fun. And I looked up, pickleball on YouTube, and I saw there was people playing in front of crowds, and it was the US Open. So it was just this cool center court, and it looked like, I was like, you know what, I think I could. I mean, I'm sure those guys are incredibly good, but I think I could do that. I don't know if I can, but I'm willing to give it a go and see what happens. So after that first lesson, I came home and I basically just made a declaration and posted this thing on Instagram, and it's still my first post on Instagram back in, I think, the end of 2019. And it was, hey, I'm gonna start pickleball today. I'm gonna document my journey for the next year, and I'm gonna try to be a pro pickleball player within a year. And then, of course, 2020 comes around and COVID hits at the beginning of it, and everything goes on pause. But that was kind of the journey. And then, so literally since I did that post, I've lived pickleball, and it's become obviously my entire life, from playing to all the content stuff I do with the podcast and video stuff. So yeah, it's been a wild ride, but it's been a ton of fun.
Yeah, I mean, you played tennis from a young age. I played tennis. You played college, and you got to see some. I guess when you played college, you see some pro players, but just to be on the other side of that, when playing professionally pickleball, I mean, what is that feeling? Because college is quite different than being on a tour and all the media that comes with that. How does that feel?
It's very weird. It's And it's a little strange in some senses. I mean, obviously pickleball is still a pretty niche sport, a little micro sport, but at the same time, within kind of pickleball and all of the people that follow it and that are fans of it, and it's more than anything, it's pretty cool. Just like, let's say, being at a tournament and people coming up saying, "Hey, love the podcast and really appreciate you putting your stuff out there," and that stuff's nice because the podcast, as I'm sure you're going to experience and maybe have experienced, yeah, it's a lot of work with yeah, it's essentially it's a passion project, right? It's initially it's not going to be this big money maker or like going to support anything, but we do it because we love it and we love talking about the sport. And to like when you're able to go have people recognize that, it's always a pretty cool feeling. So yeah, it's certainly not college. It's certainly not like college tennis was, where people are following you on the internet and following you on social and then meeting you in real life, and it's like yeah, it's fun.
Awesome. I mean, technical wise, like what came easier for you? What was harder? And who helped you?
um yeah, I had a pretty interesting approach into pickle in terms of kind of the growth trajectory. I come from a business background, and one of my favorite business people in the world is this guy named Craig Clemens, and he lives in California. He is a co-owner of a company called Golden Hippo Media, and he is one of the world's best direct response copywriters, which, if people don't know what that is, it's basically you click an ad and then you go to this long story type page, and which is essentially a sales page, and Craig writes the copy for that, the text, and it's basically just persuasive storytelling via writing. And he's responsible for billions of dollars of sales of kind of consumer products. So incredibly skilled, has like basically worked his way to becoming the top in the world at his craft, which is why, like, so I interviewed him for a podcast I had in another life called Fail On, which interviewed business people. And he told me about his 4-step process basically to becoming world class at anything. And it's something I think about all the time. It's something I think about, like, if I'm wanting to learn a new skill, or do anything, it's kind of the methodology that I follow. And it's basically it's application. So you have to, whatever you're trying to accomplish, you have to, or whatever skill you're trying to do and become very good at, you have to do it a lot. You have to actually do it 5-6 times a week. You have to immerse yourself. You have to immerse yourself with people, or you have to immerse yourself in the sport. So you have to be around it. You have to be watching YouTube videos. You have to be understanding the game. You have to be a little like obsessive in a sense, which I think every pro that's kind of gone from learning the sport to becoming a pro, everybody I've talked to was incredibly obsessive for quite a stretch of that, of that coming up. So you have to do it. You have to immerse yourself in it. You have to find mentorship. You have to find people that have already accomplished what you want to accomplish. So for me, that was starting in Austin. This is before Austin was kind of a pickleball mecca. Like, nobody played in Austin at the time. It was, Thomas Wilson was around. He was like one of the first guys I played with, but he'd play once every 2 months, and it would be like with his mom and family. And it was like, it was just fun for him. And it was this, yeah, shout out to this group, the Dormans, Christina and Walter Dorman down in San Marcos, just south of Austin. But they're kind of like, that was the crew. It was the only 5.0 pickleball in the Austin area, and I would drive down an hour each way every morning to go play with them. But once I capped out of that, like within 6 months of starting, it was like, man, I gotta find people that are like already pros. I've got to, like, I knew I had to be around people that were where I wanted to be. So I decided to move to Florida, and I was literally just like, I didn't know anybody. I was cold messaging Deckle Bar on Facebook, and he was very nice and responded and talked to me. And then I saw like to this little pocket of Florida, I knew Vivian David was there, Dekel was there, and I knew Vivian and her dad had a store with a court. So I was like, oh, that sounds convenient. So ended up moving to a place called Estero, Florida, kind of outside of Fort Myers, south of Fort Myers, and literally for kind of the next year and a half or so, practiced every day with Dekel, with Vivian, with Simone, with Catherine Parento, and that was kind of the crew. And it was exactly part of that four-part process. So that was the mentorship side of like, if you want to be in those circles, you have to force yourself into those circles. And I wasn't nearly as good as they were at the time, right? But they saw that I had potential, and they saw that I would be a good fourth, and I wouldn't ruin their games, essentially, right? And then, quickly went from being the worst player to being on the same level, and it was like, okay, so this is how you do it. So, I always talk to people about, should I drill more? Should I play more? And like, if you have a group of players that are better than you in your area, play all day, play all the games you can. If you have players that are like your level or below, just drill. So that's kind of how I look at that. And then the last piece of the 4-step process, this is very long-winded, I'm very sorry, but the last step of the process is just time. Like, it's gonna take, you hear the 10,000 hours, that kind of thing, but there in pickleball, you can certainly expedite that based on your tennis background, or let's call it table tennis background, whatever your racket sport background may be. If you come from a racket sport background, it certainly speeds the curve because you already have a lot of those hours already logged. Obviously, new sport, new strategy, new shots, you have to develop all of that stuff, and it takes time. But that's it. So that's it. It's do it, immerse yourself in it, find mentorship in it, and put the time in.
Yeah, for sure. And I know you went through an injury. I've been through injuries. It's frustrating. Walk me through that, because it wasn't a simple process, I think.
No, and it was kind of a drawn out process. So that actually, the first injury came like early 2020, probably, call it 6 months after I started, and like was obsessed and playing every day, 4 hours a day. It's like, okay, dude, you're 35. You haven't played a sport in over 10 years. Like, I didn't play tennis for a 10-year window. I just did business and work and career stuff. And then I came back out, and, obviously your mind still thinks you're 22, or so like your body is doing all the same things that it did when it was younger, because your mind's like, yeah, you've done this so many times, it's normal. But your body's like, So wore down, like, ran into a meniscus situation with my left knee, and it was kind of off and on. Like, so I popped it. I felt it pop. I was playing a singles match against Tyler Leung in California, the California Open, I think, at Los Cab. And I felt it pop in the middle of the match. So then I just went down, and then, it got really swollen. I didn't know what it was at the time, but it was a torn meniscus. And I opted not to do surgery because, again, it's right when COVID happened. So I was like, okay, I'm going to have time. So let's just see if I can. And I knew, like, if I did the surgery route, that, like, they basically trim out some of your the meniscus cartilage, which doesn't grow back because it's in a zone of your knee that doesn't get a lot of blood flow. So it doesn't regenerate. So if you have some of your meniscus trimmed, it basically removes that cushion forever. So they want you to try not to have surgery if you don't absolutely need to. So I was like, okay, let's give it some time. I did PRP injections, which is platelet-rich plasma, which is basically, they take some of your blood and they basically just inject it into your knee to hopefully, stimulate growth of the cartilage again. So did that, was able to come back, but it was, it felt like a Band-Aid, because a little time later, I tore my meniscus again, like another pop, and I like saw this little flap, and I was like, okay, let's get this taken care of truly this time. And this was May of 22. And so I went in, and they are like, you have a complex meniscus tear. You have to get arthroscopic surgery. You should only be out 8 weeks, really. So got the surgery done in Austin. I was living in Hawaii, and then I basically gave myself a 6-week goal because 8 weeks, whatever, it's too long, right, for anybody that's like competitive and athletic and wants to like push stuff. So I played from the meniscus injury to there's a Major League Pickleball 6 weeks later. That was kind of my target. I was like, okay, I'm going to go crazy on rehab and see if I can get myself ready to come back. And I got myself enough to come back to play Major League Pickleball 6 weeks later. And then ever since that, I got it taken care of with surgery. The knees felt great.
That's great. Yeah, you got a very
Yeah.
physical game, right? You get to a lot of balls and stuff like
Yeah.
that. In the knees, it's tough, right? When there's something's happening there.
It's the worst. Yeah, so it's and I'm dealing with some right knee like tweaks now. So it's like it's a constant thing. I'm trying to get much better um at just doing the stretching, doing the rehabbing, like actually taking care of things, being more proactive and not waiting for something to happen. So yeah.
Yeah. I mean, are you squeezing in more rest days if your body's telling you
Yeah.
something, stuff like that?
No, totally. So I'm resting much more. I haven't. So for example, what's the date today? The 13th, 14th.
14.
Yeah. So I haven't. Trying to remember what the date was of MLP in San Clemente, but I haven't played since I got back from that trip. So it's been probably close to a week, if not a little bit more. So yeah, definitely taking rest days, trying to heal. I've got Crohn's disease as well, which causes a ton of fatigue, and it's just another layer to manage. And some of the medications that I'm on for Crohn's disease make me more susceptible to injury and stuff. So I have to be, I'm trying to counterbalance that with supplements, that kind of thing. So it's a full on work in progress, but figuring it out.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm going to talk about partnerships.
Yeah.
Doubles is a big one. How did your various partnerships develop? Because I think when people are getting started, trying to find partners and then sort of developing that, because you have a very successful partnership right now, but there's steps to that. Walk me through the steps.
Yeah, it's progression, right? Like at the beginning of coming into pro pickleball, this is the biggest challenge I think for most players is finding a good partner. You could think like you have all the skill and ability in the world, and like, oh man, if I just had a good partner. And it's true. Pickleball is a unique sport in respect to you can isolate people, which you can't really do as much like in tennis, for example. So it's an interesting thing. The way I came into the sport was like I figured I would just play singles, even though I didn't want to play singles. A little older than most of these people, but it's a good way to show that you have talent and that you can do stuff with the ball and that you're athletic and can move and have the ability to keep improving. So I use singles as just kind of like a
marketing tool.
Yeah, essentially, it's essentially a marketing tool. Like, let's show what you can do by yourself on the court and show that you have touch and show that you have the soft stuff, and then go from there. So that's obviously a piece of it, but again, another piece of it is getting in these practice groups with other pro players so they see outside of tournaments that you have the ability. So me being in Florida with that crew, they're like, oh, okay, like he can play. And then it validates, then other people see that that's the group you practice with. And they're like, oh, well, he's going to improve fast. He's practicing with really good players. And then so it kind of revalidates to other people that, okay, this guy is going to be good. He's taking it seriously. He's practicing with, these guys every day. So that's kind of how, that's kind of how it goes. And then, the best way to do it is to just come in with another player and you guys both get good at the same time and both practice together. And then you have a built-in partner, but that's,
yeah, you got to have same goals, right? You got to have,
yeah, which is tough.
Yeah, for sure.
But yeah, it's the more you're in it, the more you show that you have that you want to be in the sport for a long time. People know you're going to be around, and I think makes it a bit easier. I've had people that that want to get a tournament in with me. They're like, hey, I'll drive to you. We can practice for the week before. So, doing stuff like that's good. Like offering stuff like offering stuff like that, showing the commitment, that kind of thing. So yeah, it's tough when you're starting out, I guess.
Yeah. And I mean, how do at pro pickleball, I mean, I've heard all sorts of different things. How do the partnerships work? I mean, some of them are like year long and they're kind of written up. Some are just like, hey, partner here, partner there. I mean, how does it all kind of work?
Yeah. It's dependent on each player. Like we just choose our own partners, right? So it's not like we have a sponsor, somebody telling us what to do, or a tour telling us what to do. For me, I truly just look at what's going to give me the best opportunity to win. And so I played this. I mean, I played most of this past year with Andrei Daescu, and we've found a pretty good rhythm together. I think there's a few things I've learned with partnerships throughout the past couple of years, and it's not always just like how does this person's game complement yours? That's a small piece of it, in my opinion.
Okay.
It's like Andrei and I are pretty similar in respect to like how we play the game, and I mean that in we're very dialed in. We don't You won't see us like smiling a ton on court, even if we're up, 11-0, 5-0. Like we don't want to lose a point. Is kind of the way we treat it. Like it's truly a business objective, and we don't want to lose a point, and that's how we treat it. And so whether it's 0-0-2 or we're down 9-10-2, like we want to win every point equally as bad. And I don't think there's too many people out there that have that mindset. So, and it's not just kind of that mindset that's good. It's also the fact that we play similar. Like he's going to drop 95% plus of the balls versus drive. I'm going to do the same. We like to win points in the kitchen. We're not going to try to drive and get a bunch of cheap points like that. So we kind of like the slower, consistent, steady game, and we want to pull people into that versus kind of the fast shake and bake, crash, drive, that kind of thing. So I think, yeah, playing philosophy is really important, and also just like general, I don't know, what do you say, attitude. So yeah, those are kind of the things you kind of look for.
Yeah. And do you guys talk about, what to do and stuff like that, or just your temperaments kind of meld together? You play enough and it fuses together, but you talk about it? Do you have patterns? You know what I mean? Like how sort of organic is it? How organized is it?
It's like for Andre and I, we'll have a couple like high level strategy items. Like where do we want to, is there somebody that has a glaring weakness on court that we need to attack? Where are we looking to return? Where are we looking to drop? There's certain patterns we like that. Uh, yeah, I don't know. I think for teams that play us, you'll see like it's interesting because Andrei's the left side player. Let's call it the more aggressive. Let's call it the better player on the left, right? So he's taking a lot of balls, and they're giving him a lot of balls. Usually, what you see with a guy on the right, like in the role that I'm playing, is somebody that's just going to make a ton of dinks, right? And just be very consistent and kind of be the rock over there. You're not going to be able to, and not be super attackable. But the reason Andrei's getting a lot of balls is because they're worried about my offense off the bounce. So they know that if they keep dinking to my forehand, that I have ways that I can hurt them, whether it's going to be flicking middle, flicking line, flicking at them. So they opt to not play to me that much. They play to Andrei more, and Andrei's not going to miss very much. I mean, he'll miss some, but like that's not going to be a super winning strategy. It's just to try to outdink Andrei. He's not going to miss a lot. So it's interesting. You have like, and we've seen it, right? Like we've won the last 5 APP. So we've, however many matches that is in a row, 25, 30 matches in a row. And we see, because everybody's throwing different stuff, right? They'll go, okay, we're just going to isolate Rob this match. And then I'm just flicking balls left and right, and Andrei's cleaning them up in the middle. Or they're like, okay, we're just going to go after Andrei this whole time and try to hit through him. And yeah, I think we're a unique combo because you don't have too many guys on the right that have more offense, I'd say. And Andrei's a little safer to dink too. Like he's not gonna do weird speed ups often off the bounce, So if you can get it to bounce in front of him, he's just gonna dink with you all day.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's interesting.
Yeah. I mean, are you at a point where you're practicing way more on the right? I mean, you've sort of committed to that side, or is your practice sort of spread out over different things still?
Yeah, it's still everything. I like when I go drill. It'll depend. Like MLP, I was only on the left, so I went from playing Chicago on the right to having play men's and mixed, obviously on the left. So, um, what I don't want to happen with my game, and I don't think it will, because my game's built kind of on scrappiness, but also having kind of disguised offense, and that's always kind of a piece of it is I always need to be sharp on the left. So, and I think that's another advantage of Andrei and I's partnership is I would say my dinking is more consistent from the left. So I can dink all day backhand. I'll miss a bit more on the forehand side, but I have more offense there too. So it's kind of, it evens out a bit. So like Andrei and I, for example, where a lot of cheat points come, especially nowadays with how how fast the ball is flying off these paddles with the grit and the spin, is a lot of cheat points come off the switch when you're stacked. So oftentimes if we're playing a team that has a big serve or a big forehand drive, we'll just stay. So we won't give up the switch. We're not going to allow you to get us in transition. So I'll stay on the left, he'll stay on the right. And I think that's also a reason that I have to continue to I have to practice on the left a lot too, not just for mix, but for men's as well.
Yeah, for sure. For you going forward, what sort of things are you thinking about to keep improving and developing?
Yeah, I think that's why the sport's so freaking cool, and I think that's why people get so addicted is because it's it's literally a never-ending journey of things you can develop, and I feel the same. It's funny, like people, like I'll see things posted and I'll talk to like some of these kids at the APP, like the next gen kids, and they're like, man, you've been playing forever. I'm like, how long do you think I've been playing? And they're like, I don't know, like 2015. I'm like, I first played a tournament 2020. It wasn't like I haven't been playing the sport as long as most of these people, but it's funny because I think just being so ingrained in the pro pickleball over the last couple of years, they just think you've been playing forever. But yeah, that's what I love is the fact that you can always develop new skills. I feel like I still have tons of room to grow, and that's the thing. It's like I've been focusing more on the right, and um, you know, there's dinks where you're going flat through. There's dinks where you're rolling it. There's lobs. There's just so many aspects that you can continue to work on. Um, so yeah, I think I'm gonna keep developing my right side game. I don't want to let the left slip at all. So mix is going to be a big focus for me going into 2024. Playing quite a bit with Susanna Barr, which will be fun because we had some success this year, and we both have little chips on our shoulder. We like having that too. We like being the underdog, and like nobody. Um, like I was the 25th pick in MLP, so the first challenger pick, just missed Premier, and I feel like Susanna is a Premier level player as well. So like we always have this constant like let's prove everybody wrong type mentality, which I think serves us well. So yeah, it'll be fun. Susanna and I, and then Andrei and I on the men's side.
Awesome, Rob. Well, I love your four-step process you learned,
Yeah,
and yeah, I appreciate all the strategy tips that you gave.
yeah,
Awesome. Just a question for me though.
sure.
One of the things I notice, coming from tennis is, there's just so many different shots you can hit. You can get, overloaded by the type of angles and things that you can do. And of course, I see people always try and like be really tricky, but I think you keep it pretty simple, with the forehand dink and stuff. How did you develop that? Because everyone seems to have like a slightly different technique with all sorts of different things.
Yeah, I think
Is it like more like a half volley, like from the shoulder? Like how do you sort of how do you how do you describe it?
it de- it depends, right? Like there's not I don't have just one, and this is still a work in progress. So even somebody that's playing the right a lot and having some decent success there, I'm still trying to figure it out, which is kind of the cool aspect of it. But I am trying. The way I think about it is, I want my dinks. I want to be able to hit speed ups and attacks with the exact same technique that my dink is. With exact. So like I want, if my opponents are watching me hit a dink, I want them to think that I can either dink that, I can attack it. Like I want them to be scared every single ball. So the way I try to take every dink is with a forehand roll. So I'm trying to do just like I'm not, it's not wristy at all. Like when you think forehand roll, you're like, okay, I have to, brush up on it and hit it with my, like, put a little wrist into it. It's not really that. It's just, for me, it's the tip of the paddle is down, like kind of facing the ground. And I'm just really just lifting up on it a little bit, but there's no wrist, there's no elbow. It's really just from the shoulder. And it's just a very consistent stroke. And the reason you don't want to have like a bunch of moving parts and variables is the more you have, the more that can break down and more can go wrong. So you want your strokes to be very simple. And so, yeah, it's not really the half volley, because the half volley, I know if I'm half volleying that they know I can't do anything offensive to that. They know it's just going to be a dink. So if I'm in an awkward position and I have to half volley it, and just to get back to neutral, no problem, I'll do that. But it's not kind of like the de facto dink that I want to hit. The default dink that I want to hit is, it's moving my feet a lot, and it's keeping the ball in front of me, and it's just rolling it cross court, because I can that it's going to look like all the attacks I hit. So that's kind of the thought process.
Perfect. I love it. Thank you so much.
Yeah.
Thanks for tuning in to the Alpha Pickleball Podcast with Tats. If you enjoyed today's episode, subscribe, rate, and connect with us on social media. Stay alpha on the pickleball court. Until our next session.